Hello YouTube, my name is Joshua Watts. I'm the owner of Joshua Watts Leather Company, otherwise known as JWLC. Today, I'll be beginning a new how-to series on the basics of leatherworking and what you need to know and some of the tools you'll be needing and where you can get them. Today, this video is going to be how to transfer your design to leather. I have 3 different methods that I personally use. The first method is tracing your design onto leather. The second method is to draw directly onto the leather. And the third method that I use a laser to lightly engrave the image onto the leather. I will start this lesson by showing you the tracing method. So with that, let's get started. We will be wanting to get our design on this round veg tan leather disc. Today, this flower and leaf is going to be our pattern. Obviously, the whole pattern is not going to fit onto the leather disc, but most of it will. So for today's purposes, we're going to trace the entire pattern onto our tracing sheets, which are just transparencies for overheads. You can get this type of paper at or plastic at office stores or leather stores such as Tandy. Now, in order to be able to trace this, all we do is we lay our design down and then we put this on top of it. Make sure to always keep your fingers onto the plastic at all times and be very careful not to shift your pattern or shift your plastic on top of your pattern. If you do, just line up your lines back where they were, and then you will be in the correct position again. You will see that you will, on some patterns, you'll have a dotted line. You don't need to be super correct on tracing those out. From this point on, I'm going to time lapse the rest of the drawing here. As you can see, we have our pattern traced onto our tracing paper. Here's the pattern. We're just going to set that to the side for now. But this is what we're going to need to put onto this piece of leather. One of the things that we need to do to be able to work with leather and to put an image onto our leather is we need to do a process called casing the leather. You can do this by using a wet sponge and wiping it across the leather. Depending on how you're going to wind up using your leather, you can actually dip it into water. But today we're going to be using a spray bottle with just plain old water inside of it. Nothing special. What we're going to do is we're going to wet the leather and then watch and wait for the water to soak into the leather. You'll also notice that the leather has changed color. Some people, when they case their leather, they like to wait for their leather to come back to almost the natural state of color that it was before it was wet. Personally, I have found, especially when I want to trace an image into the leather, that you just basically want to make sure all the puddles are soaked up, and then you'll be able to trace your pattern into the leather, and it'll be just fine. It actually takes the tracing a little bit better. So depending on your size of leather that you're working with, I would normally suggest taping the leather down or taping the tracing paper down onto the leather or onto another work surface. In this case, I think I can just hold it. All we're going to do is take our tracing, we're going to lay it on top of our leather that we want to work with in the fashion that we want to be able to carve. And then we simply just take the same pencil that we used, and I'm making dots here where there was a dotted line, and then we just trace the same pattern that we just made. One tip I can give you is to make sure that you're always continually spreading the tracing paper out on your leather. Otherwise, it will bubble up and bind. From this point on, I'll put the video into time lapse, and you can watch the progress that way. Okay, now that we have our design traced, we can lift the plastic up off the leather, and there we have it. Our design perfectly traced into the leather. One tip I have is if you do not have this indentation, or that you can't see the lines very well, what you can do is you can take a small bald stylus and retrace the lines directly in the leather. And that'll help give you a more defined line. In this case, we don't really need to do that. And that concludes today's lesson on how to transfer design onto your leather. If you have artistic abilities and a steady hand, you can trace your design directly onto the leather using a soft lead pencil. These are the ones I use. I just broke the tip off this one. These are the ones I use, the 8B pencils. They're very easy to lay the lead down onto the leather, and the lead comes up off the leather very easy. In most cases, I don't even erase it off of there. Once I decide to put a stain on there, the stain is abrasive enough for it to just wipe the lead right off the leather without staining it. So there's a little pro tip for you. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed today's lesson. It was short and sweet, but that's how they're designed. If you have any questions, please leave a comment below, and I'll be happy to answer them for you.